Good evening and welcome everybody, those of you who are arriving. Welcome to our
Hello.
webinar. It's not a meeting, so we can't see your sweet faces, which is a bit of a pity. Give us a couple of minutes while we wait for people to arrive here, but do say hi as you come in and yeah, introduce yourselves. That would be great. Hello, Helen. Welcome, welcome. You can see our, here we go. I can see our attendee list here. Lovely to see you, Claire. Yeah, so do say hi and where you're connecting from. Hi, Liz. Welcome. You attended the college many years ago. Patrick, yes, I remember you, Patrick. Background again, fantastic. You trained with Donald Robertson, I think, back in the day, right? I think. So do introduce yourselves, say hi. Yeah, fantastic. And where you're connecting from. I'm Mark Davis. I'm director and principal at UK College and founder of the Hypno-CBT method. I'm connecting with you all from just north of London, Hemel Hempstead. And joining me today is Dr. Krissie Ivings.
Hi, I'm Krissie Ivings. I'm a former NHS psychologist and now hypnotherapist, cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist, and I'm joining you from Derbyshire.
Buxton in
From
Derbyshire.
Derbyshire. Yeah.
So that's okay, Magnus. We're not. I mean, we haven't got microphones and cameras on for you guys. It's a webinar, but you have a chat. You can put the chat in here. You've got a Q&A panel as well. We really do want your questions as we go through this. Let me open up the Q&A panel. Welcome, Magnus. Hi, Maggie in Brighton. You've done stage 3. Helen in New Zealand. Welcome. Wow, that's quite a long way. Magic of the internet. Do tell me if you are currently training with us, if you've already trained and qualified, or you're thinking of training with us. So I'd love to get a sense of that, so we kind of know who's here. Um, and we'd love to know what you want to get from this evening. We have things we can talk about and present, but I want to welcome Leva. Okay. We really want to be able to answer your questions, and so what has attracted you this evening? Um, what information are you hoping to get? What questions do you have about the field, training? We're particularly targeting here people who have degrees in psychology and thinking where to go next, particularly those who might be looking at doing a doctorate in clinical psychology, those who are already attempting to do that and then finding they're not getting through, and different options there. Because I mean, that's a fantastic pathway, but it's challenging. So Claire is finishing stage 3. You're interested in page management. Stefan is in stage 1 to 3 on the fast track in 2024. Okay. Completed all practice sessions. The case studies then installed on the question. Various bits of life got in the way, but I'm now keen to submit the questions and get cracking properly. Fantastic.
Just
And Marpia is connecting from Greece. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Cynthia's connecting from Dundee, about to graduate from your psychology conversion and looking at how to put this knowledge into practice as soon as possible to help others. Interesting. Um, and you're looking at this or other trainings and how to get into practice. Is that right, Cindy? Cynthia, sorry, Cynthia from Dundee. There's quite a few people who are training with us, who have trained with us. Helen studying hypnotherapy in New Zealand, overseen by UK, of honours degree in psychology, nurse, and most significantly, a dog owner. Okay, very relatable. My white Swiss Shepherd is off in the garden at the moment. And AH is an optometrist, but the market becomes so saturated that work is drying up quickly. Really interesting. So look at a possible new career. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, particularly want to be there for those of you who are thinking about this, because we're going to attempt to provide some really honest, quite deep and rich information, I think, so you can make an informed decision and see if this is the sort of training or route that would interest you. What I'm going to do is let me introduce myself very quickly for you, and then I'm gonna have Krissie introduce herself, or I'll ask her some questions and we'll elicit wisdom. Because the great thing is we have somebody who's got a lot of experience as a clinical psychologist, 24 years in the NHS, and then setting up a private company providing local authority funded therapy services to children in care, and also a private practice, kind of sports therapist, really, question therapist. So, whereas me, what do I have? I have a lonely bachelor's degree in psychology and philosophy from Sheffield University in the 1980s. And then I went to India and lived in an ashram for 5 years, and spent 7 days a week, starting 4 a.m. meditation and chanting, and then service, and then more meditation, chanting, service, a little bit of the physical yoga stuff, but mostly lots of service and meditation and chanting and study of Indian philosophy. And then, not being sufficiently bored with that, I went to do 10 more years in an ashram in upstate New York, and continued that. So 15 years living in ashram, studying the scriptures, applying them, and then particularly in non-dual philosophy, and then came to London in 2005 without a profession to my name, a family to support, an old degree in psychology and philosophy. And what was I going to do? Hack it out, trying to get a job in doing some marketing or something that I seem to have some instinct for, but no professional, certainly no blue chip company experience or anything. And somebody said, you need to be a therapist. That's your work, and you need to be teaching and communicating and sharing. But I couldn't see a route to doing it, because back then my degree was, I only got a 2-2 because I was really a bit messed up at uni. We could talk about that if we want. And you needed a 2-1 to clinical psychology, but 42 years old with a family to look after, I couldn't engage in clinical psychology. It didn't seem even possible. And training in psychotherapy was 4 years, and I didn't like the model of developmental focus and talking about parents and childhood and all of this, and then counseling, I wasn't attracted to that model either, and that was 3 years. I would have loved to have been teaching meditation perhaps, but back in 2005 that wasn't a thing. Now it is more. And somebody said, why don't you study hypnosis and hypnotherapy, because you can train really quickly, and then you'll be seeing people like within a year, and it will start with simple cases, but that'll get you started. And I was like, okay, but hypnosis had never on my radar. I wasn't interested in it. I thought it was complete woo, just fabricated nonsense that you store on stage hypnosis shows. And I'd honestly not really looked into the area, which was, I mean, I should have done, because I have a degree in psychology, but it wasn't on our curriculum at all, not even on the extended curriculum where people would come in and do lectures on how they studied the paranormal. Nothing like that at all. We studied computational models of vision and how to teach computers to see in the 1980s, and early artificial intelligence, basically. So hypnosis, I thought this is a bit woo. I mean, I like the idea you can train quickly. Oh, there are quite a few training schools around, aren't there? And you can train quickly. But I looked around, and it was seriously, for me, as somebody who has a degree training in sort of psychological science, philosophy, went to India, and I didn't buy all the rigmarole and hype around spirituality there. I really wanted to dive into the principles, and the deep philosophy there. So I didn't find it, I looked around, all the hypnosis training didn't appeal to me. And then I found this one place called the UK College of Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy. It was run by somebody called Donald Robertson at the time. It said evidence-based, science-aligned approach. And I was like, okay, that's different. And also based on philosophy. And I was like, really? None of these other places say that their training is based on philosophy. And I was like, what is it? And it was Greek philosophy, which is actually the basis of modern cognitive therapy. It's the philosophical basis that the way the issues we have, and we're disturbed because of the way we think about things. And if we thought about things differently, we change the way we think about things, which we're free to do, which is independent of what's happening outside us, then we'd feel differently. So it isn't the events that distress us, it's the way we think about them. And the idea that we could change our thinking. So I loved the idea. I went along, tried the first day, loved the training, trained, qualified in the whole approach, very rigorous, very evidence-based in terms of being pretty strict on the scientific evidence, because hypnosis is such a field of woo, so to speak, that we've always felt the only way to navigate it is to be very strict in looking and saying what is the actual research evidence. And there's a ton of research evidence that's been done at high quality institutions like Harvard, Stanford, UCL in London, special hypnosis research labs in the departments. What does their research say? So the training I took was very, very based on that. And I learned to be quite a skeptic about a lot of therapy models, to question them, because there's a lot of hype out there. A lot of stuff works just because placebo response. Isn't that just a placebo response? So how can we really have a therapeutic method that is honest and science aligned and science based? Um, and I love because I don't think I'd have felt confident, honestly, myself, if I was going out there and I was doing something that really didn't have solid ground underneath it in terms of research and philosophy as well. I'd feel it was a bit flimsy, and I couldn't have done it. So I became a cognitive behavioral hypnotherapist in 2008, 2007, 2008, set up a practice in central and north London, got very busy. My wife joined me as being administrator and finance and doing the inquiries, and I did 20, 22 client sessions a week and we supported my family living in a nice part of North London just doing that. And I did that and then stayed close to the college. And then in 2013, I got the chance. Donald Robertson said, I'm emigrating. Would you like to take over? And so we took over the college from him, which was a fantastic body of work he put together, and then have focused less on that, seeing clients now and much more on building the college and evolving, both making the teaching clearer, but also more up to date. And recently make a lot of changes in terms of making it up to date and begin to teach a model actually that has been there for quite a while, which we'll show you in a little bit, but which was kind of now has really emerged and become a lot clearer. And it's a very simple model of human change that is not focused on psychopathology as much as actually truly believing people are not broken. They are whole and complete in themselves. They can have more influence over their life, more agency, and they can learn to remove the obstacles that get in the way of them really flourishing in their life. And what is the nature of that flourishing? So that's what we're going to look at towards the end of his model. So that's my story, and I love sharing information that empowers people, gives them access to their agency, their creativity, frees them from their painful narratives, their self-mistrust, self-doubt, and allows them to develop true confidence, real natural confidence. We were all meant to be confident. Nature intends us to be confident, to go out and explore the world. Yeah, a little hesitation here and there, but it doesn't work if we're like enwrapped in ourselves. And so I love providing that knowledge and those skills to people, both as a therapist, but as a trainer as well. So that's why I'm here. I'm sharing it with you. I hope you pick up some empowering information. And Krissie found us in 2021,
24?
but 24, was it 24? Maybe it was 24, yeah. But
23,
then had
maybe.
23, but
No,
then
sorry.
had a background as a clinical psychologist in the NHS.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist, still practicing. I graduated from Manchester University in 1998, so quite a long time ago now. Um, and had a fairly long NHS career, mainly in CAMS, mainly with crisis care. And also looked after children. And then alongside my CAMS job, I set up an independent company delivering the needs of looked after children because CAMS is just not set up to do it. CAMS doesn't want to do it. CAMS, for anyone that doesn't know, is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. Looked after children, cut across so many different areas, sort of ambulance services, local authority services, police, youth justice services, counselling services, educational services. They all have educational needs. They all have, yeah, they are a group who cut across multiple services, which basically means that everyone argues about whose responsibility it is to do something. And it's not health, it's social care, and social say no, it's mental health, and mental health say no, it's education, and education say no, we don't know. Anyway, so we set up a company that says, look, we're just going to work with these children. We're a multidisciplinary service, and we will work across settings and boundaries. We will go to the homes and work with whoever is working with these children. So we will work with schools and with A&E and with children's homes and with CAMS and with whoever else is involved in these children's lives. So I did that I'm still doing that. That's my main job, really. Set that up 14 years ago now, coming up to our 15th anniversary. And we're local authority and NHS funded. And we're very effective. So much so that we were invited to be part of a big NHS England trial looking at this way of working for children in complex settings. So that was looked after children and also children in inpatient settings. So that trial was successful. We were the only independent sector provider. We were the only who were in the trial. It was a really effective trial, and then NHS England got scrapped, and the trial with it. Um, so that's
And
kind of the story of
that's called Aspire Therapy.
Aspire Therapy Services
Aspire Therapy Services.
Limited. Yeah. So if you want to look me up, there's a LinkedIn page and a website. But anyway, the kind of story of my NHS career has been, and in fact, the career in the independent sector, but aligned with, funded by local authority NHS, has been one of, 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, or maybe 5 steps forward, 4.5 steps back. It's been very challenging to do good work in an environment that just mitigates against doing good work. So for sort of my own sanity, really, I decided I was going to do something entirely for me, which was under my own control. That I'd kind of never really wanted to charge money for therapeutic services directly to clients because I kind of thought, well, it should be free. We're a civilized nation, we're a rich country, we ought to be able to meet the mental health needs of children in crisis or in distress. And we still do that. So my main company is still free at the point of delivery to the children who use it. But it was just psychologically really, really hard work navigating systems that are so difficult to work within for all sorts of different reasons. And I wanted to do something that was very personal and very kind of spoke to me at a much more personal level. So I'm a sports person. I love all sport and have taken part in lots and lots of different sports, triathlon, ultra running, but mainly equestrian sports, so eventing, show jumping. And so I decided to become a sports psychologist and work with an awful lot of people who ride, have accidents, or they just lose their nerve when they get a bit older, or some things happen that children can be confident, but a lot of children can be very nervous. And so many people, their enjoyment of their sport is affected by either fear or fear of negative evaluation. They fall apart when they're being observed. They fantastic in training, and then they fall apart in competition. So I set up a company that did sports psychology and started working originally with horse riders, but actually since then lots of people have found me who wanted help with golf or with cycling, or doing dead turns at speed kind of thing. Again, messing up in competitions because they didn't have the confidence to properly take on turns confidently. And I kept being asked whether I offered hypnotherapy. And much like Mark, I had no interest in hypnotherapy, thought it was all woo, weird nonsense, slightly scared of it actually. Like, oh, mind control. I don't like that idea at all. So either I thought it was I was either suspicious of it or quite critical of it. And also, much like Mark, the clinical, even though I did my undergraduate psychology degree, nothing on hypnotherapy there, clinical psychology doctorate, nothing at all on hypnotherapy there either. So I came to that question. I had to answer no to because I had zero knowledge of it. But I kind of started thinking, well, if everyone wants this, like, there's probably not much to it, but it can't be that hard to learn how to do it. So why don't I train as a hypnotherapist? And purely so that I can say yes, I do offer hypnosis to people who wanted that. And I'd be like, well, I'll just do what I normally do and do a bit of woo the pendulum thing at the end of every session. And I mean, I kind of wasn't really going to go into it like that because I like doing things properly if I'm going to do them. But I got curious enough to explore hypnotherapy. I'm thinking, is there something people want this? Is there something in this that I can do that is aligned with an ethical framework of not doing something that's obviously ridiculous? A bit like Mark, I think I would have found it very difficult to do a course where I didn't believe in what I was doing and to do any kind of intervention where I didn't believe in what I was doing. So although I didn't really go into my exploration of hypnotherapy intending to train. I just got curious, like, what is this thing that people keep asking me about? And it would be good if I could say yes to that question. So, is there anything in hypnotherapy that I can use? So I started researching courses, and initially my instincts seemed to be confirmed that it wasn't a serious science, it wasn't a serious approach. And then I came across the website for the UK College of Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy, and it was completely different. The language was all completely different. It talked about the science being science aligned, being evidence based, being ethical, being robust. And when I kind of looked at the curriculum in a bit more detail, it was all very, very, I mean, my background as a psychologist was CBT and DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which is very, very rooted in behavioral science. So yeah, I mean, all of these names from the past, they were teaching the right kind of stuff. Really, really strongly evidence-based principles. So I did the course and thought it was great, really enjoyed it, started applying it into my practice, still thinking it would just be what I already do a little bit of, but with it would be solidly 95% psychological therapy with a 5% little sprinkling of hypnotherapy just to add a bit of something at the end. And I couldn't have been more wrong about that. It has completely transformed my practice in ways that I could not have possibly have imagined beforehand. So much so that I've now got another job, which is working for the college because it's a whole new career. That was a very long answer. Sorry to why I why I did the course.
So, so why did you, so talk about this discovery that you made in terms of it being so different and why it's made such a difference.
Well, to start with, it didn't feel as though it was that different. So I mean, the course for me, essentially, I guess most people when they do the course, um, the bit that's going to be quite new to a lot of people will be the cognitive and the behavioral approaches. That for me was already very familiar. So I was really interested in learning the hypnosis approaches. And so I thought, well, I'll just carry on doing, basically, I'll do cognitive behavioral therapy with a bit of hypnosis at the end to kind of solidify and I thought that might be, maximizing expectancy, a little bit of, yeah, I just thought it would add a little bit to what I was doing. And even when I did the course, I thought, yeah, I can see that this is like a form of mental rehearsal, really. Like you've learned the techniques, you've gone through them in the session, and then there's a script, and as part of the script, you kind of go through it in imagination. And so it becomes really embedded and really real to you. And so I could see the value of that. And then, what I didn't anticipate was my own personal use of it. So on the course, you do an awful lot of practice sessions where you are delivering and receiving hypnotherapy scripts. And I found them so valuable that I started, every time I competed, from about halfway through the course onwards, I would record a script beforehand and do it, and it would make such a difference.
This is
Um,
as an
in
equestrian.
equestrian sports, but yeah, everywhere. I mean, anything I had to do. So in psychological therapies, obviously, I used some of the CBT strategies in my own life, like it's useful, but it didn't have the same impact that this did. But the real turning point was when I started incorporating it into my own clinical practice. So to start with, it was quite separate. I had my cases for the course, and then I had my normal clinical cases. But I started realizing halfway through a session, thinking, you know what, I want to bring in hypnotherapy here because it clearly would be useful. And then the outcomes just started. It was the feedback from clients. Like I was always a bit, the hypnotherapy was almost apologetically at the end. And then the more and more people just embraced it and benefited from it. And I just leaned in and have continued to lean in more and more and more. Um, until I started getting really curious, which is where the second career comes in, about okay, this is working beyond my own expectations, both personally in my own personal transformation, but also professionally. Like my clients are doing so much better with adding in hypnotherapy, and I wanted to know why. Like, why does this work so well? And that became a series of conversations between me and you, Mark. What is going on? Why does this work? And it's actually not just CBT with a bit of imagination, a bit of coping rehearsal, a bit of imagining how it might work in your real life, which is all useful in CBT. You do want people to actually properly run through in their minds, like, could I do this skill? Could I try this new change? What would happen if I did? What would I do if you want people to kind of, we call it sort of play the tape forward. You want people to actually imagine themselves doing it. Um, but this was that on a completely different level. The level of direct experiencing of what life feels like when you are behaving in a more skillful and effective way. So instead of coaching people on changes you make, you just lead them through an experience in which they've already made all of those changes and then say, okay, go and do that then. And because they've done it, they can. It's extraordinary.
And give them a sort of permission just to, doesn't matter if you can do this in real life, just try it in your
Yeah,
imagination, right?
play around with it. Yeah.
Play
Just
around with it. Yeah.
imagine being, just sometimes just that question when I was like, just, all the stuff that you've come to therapy with, all these difficulties, these doubts, these fears, these anxieties, just imagine they just weren't there. What would that feel like? And getting people completely in that. And then, I mean, you do that in CBT too, but when they've really got that, what that would feel like, where would, what would be different? How would you know? How would I know? Like, then take you through a hypnosis where that is embedded so much more vividly and so much more powerfully experientially. So it's no longer a thought experiment. It becomes a direct experience of what life is like, free of certain long-standing sort of habits, I suppose, cognitive habits, behavioral habits,
And I think
processes.
it's interesting, you're because when people take the training, for those of you taking the training, those thinking of it, the first we have it in three stages, and stage one is all the stuff on hypnosis essentially, and then you do stage two, which is all on behavior therapy, really
Mm.
powerful model, lots of forgotten stuff, the field's forgotten that we've kind of brought back and integrate that with hypnosis, and then cognitive therapy, changing thoughts and beliefs, and integrate that with hypnosis. But you're right, people get they kind of they're now enamored with the behavior therapy or the particularly the cognitive therapy because it feels like, but we need to go back to the can nearly reverse it because you'd already covered quite a lot of that. It wasn't all like, oh wow, okay, interesting, but the oh wow was still retained for you around that first stage. And I know I see so many people kind of sort of not, it's just there's so much information comes in, they kind of forget that. And then, but bringing that back around again to how people, yeah, close their eyes and imagine how would it be if they were free of their
Yeah.
issues and inviting
And
them
then
to imagine
experience
they're free.
exactly what that's like
Yeah.
by going
Yeah.
through doing that in hypnosis, where it's vivid and real. It feels vivid and real.
Well, and I think that, I mean, the other aspect to this is then trying to find, I mean, coming up with an explanation of what is hypnosis, which is, and what it isn't, which is something that I didn't say we've struggled with, but it's not easy. The field of research into hypnosis is not, there are lots of different theories. And so, we present what we think are the most well supported and most coherent and pragmatic in terms of what really actually influences what you do with the client and how you think about and deliver it, what you want them to understand, and so they can do it for themselves as self hypnosis. But then there's been recently more, and this has always been around for a while, but more focus on this idea of the brain. What's the purpose of the brain? The brain is not there to experience reality. It's there to try and make sense of the sense data coming in, which means it's kind of trying to predict what's out there. The brain can't know what's out there because it just gets electrical signals. Then it has to make sense of them based on some previous experiences. You have to have a model of the world, or you have to have a previous experience of an apple to recognize an apple, so to speak. And this is what I doing my computational models of vision in the 1980s. That's what we learned. Computers can't make sense of video images you give them because they don't know what anything is. And so, but you give them a model of a table or a chair, and it can map to that model. So we knew back then, and we were taught back then that the idea was that basically that the experience we have is 90% model driven by the internal model and 10% by what's actually happening in the present moment. And that tied up with the ideas in philosophy, those of you who are philosophers. I mean, that's essentially, Kant's whole idea is very, very aligned to this, Immanuel Kant's idea. And is it in Critique of Pure Reason or some of the other books? I can't remember. I didn't read all of them. But if you summarize it, essentially, he's saying that we, we a lot of our experience is created from the inside out, not so much from the outside in. Well, that becomes really interesting then for us as therapists with the model we've got. We began to teach on the course this idea. I would introduce this idea that in hypnosis, we're giving people new memories, and that and not just sort of an autobiographical memory. Oh, I remember I had an experience with Mark and hypnosis. No, a kind of how to memory, how to be confident, how to introduce yourselves to people in a confident way, for example. So those what we call sort of implicit or sort of skill-based memories. And the idea is that those new memories would win out against the old ones. And people had developed a theory. Professor Korobam for treatments of depression had a competing memory theory. We're going to install new positive experience memories and have them win out against the old ones. And I think Christine Podesky also had she actually for personality disorders had a kind of new model, old model. We're actually going to rebuild the whole personality kind of from the ground up by having new experiences, and build those experiences up. So the person has a new sort of personality set in a way. Those are out there already, but then recently there's been a lot more neuroscience come forward around this idea of the brain as a prediction engine. It's kind of over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, particularly strongly, which is interesting, and because this really is, in some ways, what we've been teaching. We've always taught that imagination is, like Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination allows us to run this simulation. But the brain as a prediction engine would actually say that in a way that, well, this Professor Anil Seth talks about your experience is a kind of like a controlled hallucination. The brain is hallucinating, but it's being reined in by reality around us. But first, it's making a guess about what's there from the past, from the data coming in and the past models. So it's making a prediction, and what we see as a prediction, its best guess of what's actually going on right now, and then that updates. But I would prefer the word that this is a essentially it's imagination. That's what imagination is. This is like controlled imagination that's happening that then is getting updated. And once we start to look at it like that, if we say, well, the basis of reality, what we call experiencing reality, is actually the brain predicting, which is imagining. Let's just close our eyes and run some new prediction models, some new prediction experiences. That's imagination. We're working, therefore, with the very essential way that we experience the world, which is through the brain's predictions. And I think I don't know, that's a kind of, I've summarized a whole bunch of stuff. Does that make sense for you there, Chrissy? And has that helped? I think you found that a very powerful way to think about things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so cognitive behavioral therapy is also based on this idea that we don't see reality as it is. We construct it based on our own ideas already. So we have lenses. We see the world through different lenses. But that was kind of taught on the course and then used kind of almost as a metaphor. So, if you believe yourself to, like Henry Ford, if you believe you, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. We construct our world and we evaluate experiences through lenses of previous experiences, through kind of self-concept, through what we believe is possible for us, through childhood conditioning, through whatever. We construct reality, and we're not logical necessarily about how we do that. Um, so, but what's really interesting about the new neuroscience of the brain as a prediction engine is that it takes that from metaphor and makes it neurological reality. That actually the whole brain, it's not just a sort of cognitive lens that we see reality. We could see reality as it is, but our own thoughts and beliefs get in the way, which is kind of the cognitive model that we have the thinking errors, cognitive distortions that affect how we see reality. Actually, we aren't capable. Our brains are not designed to perceive reality directly because that's not what brains are for, which is a really interesting question. Like, what is the brain for? Once an organism gets complex enough to need a brain, to need consciousness. It's there for survival. It's there to adapt to its environment. It's there to, and to adapt to the environment, it has to predict what that environment's going to be one day to the next. You cannot take in the full range of sensory information second by second by second and make sense of it. You have to be running simulations all the time. Um, and so seeing, the question, what are brains for? Helps you see it makes it clear really that the brain consciousness is a kind of emergent property from the true function of a brain, which is to allow us to move around the environment and adapt to it and make sense of it. And the more complex the organism became, the brain became so complicated that we appear to have developed consciousness, and we're not going to. But seeing the brain as a prediction engine means that we actually, well, it's got, for me anyway, I mean, this is all very new, so haven't quite got my head around exactly how to express these ideas. But for two things. One is when we are running new simulations in hypnosis, we are actually doing something genuinely powerful at a brain-based level. So all the metaphorical use of things like updating, when you do exposure therapy and you talk about habituation, and so you have this fear response to a spider, and then you bring the spider closer and closer, and you allow the body to habituate, and then the brain kind of updates. It actually gives a neurological reality to what updating the brain means. It means you're changing the predictions the brain is going to make about whether or not a spider is dangerous or not. So at a very real level, running new simulations changes how you see the world. It primes the brain. So a spider is recategorized at a brain-based level as non-dangerous. So you don't have to be courageous to deal with spiders. You're just not scared of them anymore because your brain has changed its perception, its prediction about what a spider might do to you. But the same applies to everything, public speaking or riding successfully around a show jumping course or driving a car, on a motorway. If you run simulations in imagination of yourself successfully doing that, then the brain now has a new set of predictions around what driving cars on motorways feels like and what's possible for you. So yeah, it's kind of what we've been doing in psychological therapy. What I've done my whole career is helping people change their behaviors and thoughts by believing in new possibilities, and then it's always been recognized that the experiential element's really necessary. So in CBT, you do that through exposure treatments or through behavioral experiments. You have to get people to actually go out and do the new behaviors. So it's often described not as a talking therapy at all, but a doing therapy. The talking bit is just persuading people to do the doing bit. And change comes from the actual making changes and then seeing the world responding to you differently, which updates predictions. But the problem with all of that is that it's really hard to persuade people to do that because it's scary and stressful and people just talk themselves out of it. To do it in imagination, you can run all of these new simulations of doing it differently and seeing how the world responds differently when you do it differently, completely safely and in fact even enjoyably. So not only are outcomes so much better, but actually the whole process is a lot less stressful. And then of course you do go out and you do the doing in real life, but you've already done it. So you can do it because you've done it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it rewires the brain, it changes the brain's predictions, which is so the whole language of rewiring the brain can be just updated to fit actually a more accurate neuroscientific explanation of what the brain's actually doing and what's happening at a brain level when you're being hypnotized.
But I think what makes that lock in as a model is that is buying the whole model in terms of the purpose of the brain is to predict in service of what you're going to do next. So it's very much a movement, motor, very much informed by motor neuroscience, and that we're not really so interested in what's going on inside. What's going on. We're very kind of an evolutionary sort of biological approach. We're interested in the behavior that not just propagates the species, but that's the point of, the whole scene. So we're looking, there's without any movement happening, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. The system is just spinning around inside itself. And so the great Victorian physiologist, Charles Sherrington, who laid the groundwork for a lot of modern neuroscience, actually, said the final common pathway is motor, which means that the output of all this nervous system activity must be, in the end, movement, although nothing's happened. So, but I think that's an important principle that I know you've had your eye on pretty much probably all along professionally, Krissie, I think compared to other people that perhaps might have bought into all the stuff. The purpose of the brain is not to think. It's not to think. I mean, it's a useful thing sometimes, but it's not the purpose of it to think or to contemplate deep. Can you look deep inside yourself and see your own internal workings? And I like this answer of this behavioral psychologist Nick Chater, who says it's like the readout of the calculator trying to display how it works inside. It can't. All you get is a readout of the calculator. So all you get is that consciousness is just a readout, like the calculator of what and you when you try and look inside, it's kind of just making it up. You can't really see your internal workings, just like the calculator can't. So
Mm.
we focus then away from all that introspective stuff into, well, what do you want? What would you really like to be doing? And feeling and thinking, because we want the feelings in there certainly. But what would you really like to be doing? And I think that, don't you think that makes, because I can see a lot of psychologists, psychotherapists are kind of fascinated a little bit more sometimes with the internal workings and less behavioral goal focused, what we might say.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, what people want is to achieve their goals, with however they're defined. I mean, people don't. Self-exploration might be interesting, but fundamentally, if you're miserable, you want to be happy. If you're anxious, you want to be relaxed. If you're fearful and you avoid saying yes to opportunities for fear of failure, you want to say yes more to life. Um,
But I might
so
want to know why. Shouldn't I know why I'm depressed?
I think people might be curious, but at the end of the day, if I gave you a choice, look, I can spend 3 years helping you understand yourself, or I can wave a magic wand and make you happy. Which one would you go for? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to focus a little bit on process, like what, but so that when you get stuck in novel situations in the future, you can think, well, okay, this is the same thing, just running again. So, I think some introspection is useful, and it is guesswork, like processes that you can observe and things that are going on inside. But fundamentally, yeah, it is about change. It's about action. It's about moving forward with your life in whatever way is meaningful for you. And that's the other thing that I love so much about this model is because fundamentally, when people are in distress, their world is shrinking in one way or another. So if they're really anxious, their physical world might be shrinking. You might start avoiding certain places, and then the number of places you avoid gets wider and wider over time until you might end up housebound. And then even within the house, going upstairs might become problematic. So you become kind of limited to a small room. So, your world is visibly shrinking. And if you're depressed, very similarly, you might start dropping activities, you become more withdrawn, you become more isolated, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And your world gets, and if you're lacking in confidence, then you pass over promotions, you don't speak up in meetings, you just get smaller and smaller, and you feel smaller and smaller. And so psychological distress, I think, is about the shrinking of possibilities available to you that you believe are available to you. And in imagination, you can open those possibilities back up again and give people glimpses of what is possible for you. But more than that, if the brain is a prediction engine, when I mean that this is the model is predicting this, it's essentially a research question, I guess. But when you are low in mood or anxious or feeling really unconfident and you look at the world, you literally do not see it as a place of possibility and opportunity. You see it as a place of threat. Your options are restricted. The word that you taught me, Mark, affordances, are from Gibson back in the day. The what the world affords you, the options the world affords you have shrunk. And in hypnosis, you can open those all up again. And then if the affordances have been opened up, if the possibilities you can perceive have been opened up through imagination, then actually your brain has started to see them again. That those perceptions which have been shut down are beginning to become available again. Which is really exciting because, like, again, at a brain level, suddenly opportunities that seemed impossible now feel possible. At a brain
And
level,
this is
you can, yeah, I could do that.
and this is the mechanism by which it's working is non-conscious. It's not a, it's not a
Yeah.
person. We in I mean, this idea of affordances, or we could use the word action possibilities in a situation. When we think even more about, well, what's the brain is there for predicting what, predicting, what's the best thing to do in a situation, which means it's sensing and predicting the action possibilities that are the fit between the environment and the capabilities of the creature, animal, or us. And so, but the idea is that it's happening even before you see the colors and sounds, which is sort of the perceptual fill-in. The action possibility or affordance sensing is happening before that, and the brain is preparing the body to meet the demands of that situation. If the heart rate has to go up, the blood
Mm.
pressure needs to go up, what needs to change, and all of that happening super fast and super automatically, even before you're conscious of what you can see and hear. And there's some quite strong neuroscience to back that up. There's some strong evolutionary theory and thinking to back that up. And so, from that point of view, I think that also changes the way, kind of, both the confidence which we approach that, but also the way in which, because you've been also introducing this to clients now, haven't you? And it's doing some of the
Yeah.
kind of psychoeducational prep work that gets them ready to go, okay, yeah, let's work
Yeah,
with
and I
this.
mean, actually, I think it's always useful to link things back to, okay, in the real world, what does this mean? What does this mean for me and my clients and my practice and how
Yeah.
I work? So, in CBT, the usual process after an assessment would be setting goals. And I've been generally doing that, goal setting. But then you're setting goals before you've done any of the work to expand people's sense of what's possible for them. So, I had a client who was frightened of driving. She would only drive very, very, very small number of places, very close to home, roads that she was very familiar with. And within about 5 minutes. So when we set goals, initially, it was, well, maybe I could drive a minute further, break it down, and maybe I could drive a little bit further. And then I did a session with her, which wasn't about driving at all. In fact, I did 3 sessions didn't even discuss driving. It was just like, let's just humor me. Let's just look at believing that you can do things, general things. So lots of ego strengthening. I can do stuff kind of scripts. I can problem solve. I can figure things out. And looking back at history, at what things that she's achieved in previous parts of her life, I can be courageous. Like, and then when it came to goal setting again, it was
But I
like,
think
let's
just
not.
before that, I wanted, because you explained this to me, but you also explained to her about prediction.
Yeah, I
And
also
she
talked
could
about
see the
prediction.
way in
So
which she was closing
yeah, yeah,
down the
yeah. So I
predictions.
then explained. So we did all of that. Then I talked about the brain as a prediction engine. So I don't want you to set goals. I just want you to shut your eyes, and I'm going to take you on a drive. And I didn't get her to set the goal of going somewhere because it was like, well, she's just going to set a goal that's tiny because she. So instead, it was like we're just gonna drive down the A54 to Oxford. We're just going to drive. We're going to drive for an hour on a motorway, on a dual carriageway. So so we did, and at the end of it, she was like, "Wow, yeah, well, I think I could do that." And I mean, I haven't. So the goal went from maybe we could expand it's this kind of sense of window, which is the usual CBT way. It's like break it down, small steps, have a graded hierarchy, and expand stepwise. It's like, yeah, no, forget that. Just get in the car and drive. But do it all on imagination. Say, well, and she was like, so as she was on the dual carriage, I was like, what could go wrong here? Well, there might be temporary traffic lights. Well, if there's temporary traffic lights, what will you do next? Well, I'll brake and I'll stop and I'll wait till it goes green. It's like, can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. And all of a sudden, at the end of it, she was just laughing, like, why did this seem so hard? So yeah, I mean, that was not even a different therapy. It was just different ordering. Um, don't goal set when you're still living in this world of limited possibilities.
But I mean, she
So,
she could have answered that question because it was so difficult because my brain was predicting because I was
yeah,
into that
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't. And as soon as my world is narrowing, as soon as I say I can't, all these things look, you know, an
So,
affordance is like if you come in and you see a door handle, you can open the door, but if the door handle's too high, you can't. So
I mean,
that's
the thing
like,
that in terms of this particular client, obviously in CBT therapy, you will get people to predict what might be difficult. So you will, as if imagine, you will say, so what would be so hard about that? I mean, the downward arrow, what's the worst thing that could happen? What then? And then what then? And then not then. But because people are answering those questions, that was still in that brain of fear and restriction and I can't do it. It's like, well, there might be a thing. And then and you can get people get agitated even answering those questions. And you're trying to unpick like, what is the fear? Well, I'd just panic and then I'd stall and then people would back up behind me and then they'd all freak out. Um, the difference was that we were doing this in hypnosis where she was calm and relaxed and happy because I told her to take calm, relaxed, happy feelings into the situation with her. And so she was driving along calm, relaxed, and happy. So then it's like, okay, there's temporary traffic lights up ahead. Now what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to brake. And you stalled your car and there's people behind you. Now what are you going to do? I'm going to ignore them and restart the car calmly. So it just changed everything. I mean, it's something so simple, but it just changed everything. And I really hope that there's some cognitive behavior therapists listening here who can relate to the kind of downward arrow process where could see how the conversation about trying to predict what might be hard and then trying to problem solve and cope ahead and all of those things you're doing that with someone who is still primed for it's all going to be disastrous. I can't cope, it's going to be really difficult. You're not doing it with someone who is feeling relaxed, confident, and happy. And so it's just completely different. I mean, it's not tweaking around the edges of CBT. It's a totally different way of delivering the same sort of treatment protocols, in a way that's just, yeah, better in every way, as far as I can see. Because it's faster, it's more enjoyable, appears to me to be closer to the way the brain actually works. You're not fighting, you're working with a receptive, open brain there. So yeah, I am a convert, definitely.
And it
Hence
does seem to be
my new career.
well, it does seem to be also that it's I mean transdiagnostic in terms of because we're going to focus first of all on just feeling relaxed, feeling stopping all the negative chatter and just relaxing, being happy, and then imagining new possibilities and increasing the range of possibilities. That's a general thing that you do with everybody before you get into the more of the specifics of what the problems are then. But we're going to discuss what the problems are from having
Hmm.
ended the painful self-narrative and got them into a calm, relaxed, confident narrative and perceptual experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You just need to do a little bit of work first to get people out of I can't. It's too hard. It never work. It won't work. Things don't work for me. That whole conversation in the head sabotages treatment before you've even started, which is why CBT therapists are trained to identify all of those, self-sabotaging beliefs and unpick them slowly and go through. You don't need to unpick, just get rid of them. Just park them. Delete.
How would it be?
Drain
How would
from
it
your
be if you could
brain.
just park those and let's try experiencing, and then we
You
get the
can,
new stuff locked in?
you can in
Um,
hypnosis. You can't in most other ways. You can't really just get rid of those thoughts. But some cognitive techniques, metacognitive therapies, talk about decentering from your thoughts, taking a step back, seeing them as kind of cognitive diffusion techniques. It's there, but it's just not there quite in such an accessible, effective way as this appears to be, from my own clinical experiences of using it. So.
so let's the thank you so much for that. And I mean to tell everybody that the model that we've been teaching that I trained in and then we evolved kind of cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, CBT plus hypnosis and mindfulness and a toolkit of techniques. That is still there, and that's you can work that way and do it that way. And we think there's another way of kind of taking all of that and organizing it in a way that's more simple, transdiagnostic, more powerful, and less not really focused on psychopathology so much, but much more on kind of human flourishing and growth. So let me present a little bit about that, and then I want to hear what Krissie, because we just started the thing, and she said she got more thoughts on the word flourishing. So let me come back and let me just get a little PowerPoint up, because then we can talk through and look at hang some concepts in front of ourselves and have a look at them. Well, maybe we'll start from here. This is a good place, I think, possibly to start, play from current slide. So one of the things to make sure that we are going to be on the sort of same page of what is hypnosis, and this could be filled out a lot more. But the problem is, once we get into this topic, we've got to decide what and what isn't hypnosis, and adopt a model that I'm going to propose is both well supported but also more helpful. It's not that we're nerdy just about evidence-based hypnosis. That has real implications for what we do with clients in the therapy room, how we think about hypnosis, how we introduce it to clients, everything, and teaching them self-hypnosis. So there's zero evidence that hypnosis induces a special state of consciousness or trance. These are essentially sort of superfluous concepts. People will say, well, obviously hypnosis is a trance because it feels differently. It feels different, but that's not evidence of a trance. That's just whatever you're imagining on will make you feel different. It's just imagining things. But also people will say, well, the reason that person can't bend their arm or can't remember their name, all the exotic phenomena is because they're in a hypnotic trance, as if the concept of the trance explains the extraordinary behavior of hypnosis, but it doesn't explain anything. It's just because then you say, well, how do you know they're in a trance? Well, look, they're stuck in the chair. They can't get out of the chair. They're obviously in a trance. Why can't they get out of the chair? Because they're in a trance. How do you know they're in a trance? Because they can't get, it's circular. It doesn't explain anything. You think you got an explanation, but you haven't. Then you run around telling people we've got to put you into a trance to make this change. And what we know is that if you introduce the word trance, it creates all sorts of fears. It's not a client-led work. Clients don't arrive with the idea that hypnosis is a trance unless they've been introduced to that. They don't naturally describe it as a trance. There's research supporting all of this. They describe it as focused attention on suggested ideas. So, and if you introduce it as a trance, it reduces their responsiveness to hypnosis. And there's no physiological, neurophysiological, neurological, any sort of evidence that hypnosis induces this special state of consciousness or trance that explains the phenomena of hypnosis. We've got some better ways of doing that. I'm not going to go through them all right now, but there are a number of kind of interacting models. But the idea of that we're inviting people to experience and predict, therefore the brain predicting different things. But also I think that involved in hypnosis is the gathering up of attention. And so the scattered energy of the mind is brought to bear into a single laser-like focus. I think that's a very helpful way to think about it. And that as hypnotherapists, or when we're therapists doing the hypnosis bit, suddenly what we're doing is focusing the client's attention with high motivation and high expectancy. These are this is part of getting clients ready for hypnosis. And part of the way that, when I've looked at hypnosis, I think it involves both the focusing of attention and a temporary shutting down of all thought into a state of, it might just be a brief moment or two of stillness. So, but the important thing is to break the chain of thinking. Thinking runs in loops. We are thinking loops. It just goes round and round and round and round. And the hypnotic induction, I believe, should break the chain of thinking. And so that there's a moment of stillness where something from that, a genuinely new sort of stream of focused attention and thinking can happen. But that stream of focused attention and thinking is now being guided by us as the therapist, saying, now focus on my voice, forget about everything else, and imagine and experience the following things are true as if they're happening right now. How would it be if you woke up tomorrow and felt more confident? And the client is now listening, thinking along with, and experiencing along with the words of the therapist. And so they're being invited to have these experiences. But the reason why it's so powerful is because of the focused attention, and also, there's no focusing the attention while you're still feeling tense and anxious, not such a range of possibilities. Yeah. So we do use, there wants to be some relaxation. Some I focus on bringing some sort of pleasantness, smile to yourself. Imagine you're on a beach, imagine a pleasant color. So there's some relaxation because I think reduction of tension is important to increase psychological flexibility because physical tension and rigidity goes along with mental tension and rigidity. Yeah. So we want to relax the body, which because there's no difference between the mind and the body. It's one system. Relaxing the body is relaxing the mind. Relax the mind body system, induce a pleasant feeling, so a pleasant atmosphere, and now begin to imagine with focused attention and play along with a series of positive possibilities. That I think is the best thing. So we say it's not about accessing the subconscious or the unconscious. And you know what? You can't point your attention inside and see your hidden depths. You're just going to make something up. That's the nature of the mind. So the idea that hypnosis gives us access to hidden depths or something like that, or repressed memories, is just hypnosis is imagination on steroids. So you will have some profound insights, but literally your brain's just made them up. Yeah, it's imagined them. Um, Hypnosis is a skill and it's the subject doing it. It's not done to them, though we can guide them into it. It's essentially all hypnosis is fundamentally self-hypnosis. And we want to, it's most effective in research to teach clients that. For example, if you're using hypnosis for pain control, it's been shown that if you introduce them to hypnosis as self-hypnosis and show them how to do it on themselves, they will have better results with their pain control than if you lead them through it. Yeah. Um, though there's some benefits to leading people through as well. But so some definition here: focused attention, motivation, expectation, and imaginal absorption, as if you're really there right now. So that's why they're no longer in the room, they're in their imagination, powerfully experiencing it. And those of you who work with children will know that their ability to kind of not be in the room and be so absorbed in their imagination is immense. They have a tremendous imaginal capacity. I mean, what we want to do is really open up that imaginal capacity again, even for the adult here. And so that in that we can have all these experiences of new positive possibilities that actually change then the actual possibilities the brain is sensing out there, the affordances, the landscape of possibilities. Um, there's lots of experimental research into hypnosis. Again, special dedicated hypnosis labs at Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley. Um, for those of you psychologists, be interested to know that you can use hypnosis to derail the Stroop effect, which the Stroop effect is where it takes people longer to name the color that a word is written in if the word is a word of another color. So let's say the word green is written in the font color blue. If you ask somebody to try and name that, it takes about a third of a second longer than if the word wasn't a color word. Does that make? Because the brain reads and then they've got to come back and focus on the color. So the immediate thing is to say the word that's there rather than name the color. But with hypnosis, that automatic thing can be removed and people can name the color pretty much instantly. We can also introduce functional blindness, functional paralysis, essentially kind of switch on or off different functions, which is quite interesting, particularly with people who are very, very responsive in hypnosis. We can change the architecture of sleep and increase the amount of time people spend in stage 4 deep sleep. Again, influencing things that are, you know, automatic processes. And there's dedicated academic journals, thousands of research papers. So we can have an evidence-based, science-aligned approach to hypnosis, and that's what we've always taught. And now, primary applications, the strongest research is really for chronic pain, and also gut-brain axis disorders like irritable bowel syndrome. We just did the first ever workshop with NHS Consultant Gastroenterologist who trained with us, Hypno-CBT for IBS. That's the first ever, really basically the first even CBT for IBS, because you can do CBT for IBS, and certainly the first ever Hypno-CBT where we're putting those together for irritable bowel syndrome. It's really, really effective, and IBS affects so many people and is very, very distressing. And there are other gut-brain axis disorders that it should be able to influence as well. And a lot of the models there, particularly in, for example, chronic pain, are now using this predictive processing model, and using hypnosis to update those predictions. There's a book out called Unlearn Your Pain, I think it is. Um, so it's highly effective for anxiety, stress management, performance enhancement. This is hypnosis on its own, and utilizes focused attention to create an automatic experience that changes habitual thinking. The 70% rule, it's not really a rule, but generally research that compares hypnosis with CBT to CBT on its own shows that adding hypnosis improves results by about 70%. For 70% of people have better results if they have hypnosis added to their CBT than CBT on its own. This isn't the model that Krissie and I are teaching, just kind of standard adding some hypnosis to CBT. 70% of people have better results. And I mean, considering that's CBT's, the most effective psychotherapy in terms of the research that's done. Of course, research always distorts things somewhat. The idea that actually 70% of people would do better if they had hypnosis added is just massive. We should introduce it. But the other thing is, and which kind of you're picking up from Krissie there as well, is that when you add hypnosis, you can often create some pretty profound change quite immediately. And that's really important, that clients experience some sort of big shifts and changes, not complete, we're not delivering all of therapy in one session or two sessions, but in those first sessions, they're experiencing some pretty big changes. That's really important because there's a ton of research, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Krissie, that shows that generally clients need to experience some change in the first three sessions for them to continue in treatment. And if you don't get them over the line somewhere with some change in the first three sessions, outcomes are less likely to be good. I think that's quite well supported, isn't it, Krissie?
Yeah, and also even if people stay in treatment, there's diminishing returns. You get most change early on,
Hmm.
so and less and less and less change as time goes by. Um, so you want to get as much change in those early sessions as possible because it's going to decline anyway, whatever treatment you're using.
Front loading. And the other thing is, of course, we will talk about the therapeutic alliance as being, perhaps the strongest predictor of outcome. But there's always been a chicken and egg situation question about this, which is, does the strength of what comes first? And definitely, if you deliver help your client have this change happen in the first three sessions, it will strengthen the therapeutic alliance. There's been a chicken and egg question around that. Um, so yeah, very helpful. So we can really front load change at the beginning and some quite profound experiences for clients of something different. Which does what? Even if it doesn't address their direct issues going on, it gives them hope. It gives them hope. And hope is so important. Hope is kind of the driving thing. Clients arrive because they've lost hope. What does that mean? They can't see new possibilities, the horizon. So just increasing hope. Interesting, a study done on teenagers who with sort of mild anxiety and depression, given a 30-minute psychoeducational video lecture about neuroplasticity, that the brain can change quite quickly, and secondly, that it's not locked in for life. Also, that major personality measures, your extroversion, introversion, neuroticism, that these can actually change quite a lot during a lifetime, and some of them can change quite quickly, even through a few sessions of therapy. Just that 30-minute presentation shifted their scores 6 months later. Why? Because it's such important information. I'm not stuck. I'm not going to be like this the rest of my life. My brain is not no longer, just because I've got a 20-year-old brain doesn't mean it can't change. So hope, massively important, and facilitating a profound experience. They start to see hope in that, and particularly if they can see that they were responsible for that. So you make sure they take the credit and they take the agency. You don't want to have this thing. So we're against the whole sort of powerful therapist, hypnotherapist. Oh God, you're such an amazing hypnotherapist, Krissie. You wield the power of hypnosis over my mind in just such an incredible way. We don't want to do that. We want to have them wield the power of their own hypnotic wand over their own mind so that they have agency and they take credit for the change. Very, very important. And this is the whole, if you want to study more about imagination, we're calling this essentially imagination therapy, and basically working with the brain as a prediction engine, and that imagination is prediction, is actually perception. It's the whole way we experience the world. Yeah. So this is a great book to look at, How Emotions Are Made. She's got another one called 7.5 Lessons About the Brain. Um, and this is all about the brain as a prediction engine. And this idea also that we are, what our head of our senior advisory board, Donald Meichenbaum, talks about us as being homo narrans, that we are storytellers. Fundamentally, as a species, we are storytellers, and the stories we tell ourselves and others influence the way we experience ourselves and our world and what happens. It's called a constructive narrative approach. The stories we tell ourselves construct our reality and our future. Hypnosis is just about the most powerful way to begin telling a new story. Yeah. Through vivid imagining. Yeah. Close your eyes, focus on my voice, make yourself comfortable, and we'll begin. You are a strong, confident person. And they're thinking along, you see. So it's not just that we're homo narrans, storytellers, we're homo imaginans. We imagine along with the stories we tell. And it's the imagining along with the stories we tell that updates, that creates the predictions by which we experience the world. Yeah. So the focus shifts from rehashing the past to imagining and experiencing new future possibilities. This is present-centered and future-focused, and up to date with the neuroscience. So, I'm not going to. This was about, can we have a true science-based psychotherapy? And that's what I love what we're doing here. And I think, well, this is on point because we're aimed here particularly for psychology graduates, and those who are looking at psychology pathways. And one of the things is when you start to look, I mean, even how aligned is cognitive therapy, not behavior therapy, but cognitive therapy with the science of psychology? There's some questions there, particularly with the new neuroscience. How aligned are other therapeutic approaches to science is really questionable. I mean, attachment theory is lovely, but the science isn't really as strong as we might like here. Can we have a true science-based psychotherapy? And that's what we honestly, I've always tried to build at the college, is something that's really grounded in the science and aligned with the science and informed by the science and updated by the science, so that we can really feel on solid ground here. And I think particularly with this now bringing in the neuroscience of the brain as a prediction engine, it's kind of in a way the science has caught up to some of the stuff we'd already been doing and given but a much more powerful explanation to it. But one of the things here to be aware of is Donald Meichenbaum is one of the greatest sort of psychotherapists, and helped create cognitive behavioral therapy in the 70s and 80s. He's 85, 86 years old now, on our senior advisory board. And there's a great article called 7 Questions for Donald Meichenbaum. You can look it up. It's on Psychology Today. It was done quite a long time ago, 2008. But one of the questions he's asked is, what is the toughest part of being a therapist? And I thought this was helpful to read this back to you all. So this is somebody who was named in the top 10 most influential psychotherapists of the 20th century. His answer to this question was, the toughest part of being a therapist is how not to get caught up with all the questionable psychotherapeutic bullshit that pervades the field. Almost anything can be called psychotherapy. There is a need to maintain a critical, consumer, discerning attitude and employ evidence-based psychotherapeutic procedures and follow empirically based behavior change principles. There are several psychotherapy procedures that can make clients worse. Any advocate that says this is the cure or proposes a revolutionary approach does not deserve your attention nor your money. Stay away from hype. It is tough to do. So, and he wrote an award-winning article called How to Spot Hype in Psychotherapy, a 19-point checklist, back in 2019, which you can look up. So it's a bit tough here because we are saying this is a bit of a revolutionary approach in some ways, Krissie. So we might be flying in the face of it here a little bit, but we're saying try it out and see what you make of it, and then we'll take you through this model here, which this is the model we're presenting now, which is again, it doesn't change what we teach on the course, because the CBT with hypnosis, with mindfulness, and 35 evidence-based techniques toolbox, that's all there. But the way in which we approach it, the way in which we order the experiences we take clients through, and so that their brains can update. We're putting in this particular way here: I am, I can, I value, I act, connect, and flourish. And the idea here is that underneath this journey we take clients through, not in a single session, you could do it in one long day, perhaps with a client, is that there are two main mechanisms happening. And one is imagination, to rehearse or run simulations of new positive possibilities that then changes the way what we're experiencing because the brain is predicting differently. And the second, important, is being present and disinhibited. And that means getting out of your head and also your attention internally on the body to pay attention to the world around you, to the sensory environment, and then to respond to it with immediacy, letting go of a lot of control in a way that we've been trained to do, to allow ourselves to be stimulated directly and immediately by the world around us without going through the mind and all the thoughts and all the editing, and just to respond directly and immediately to what's around us and let go of that control. And that means also let go of the emotional control and let the emotions run us as nature designed them to. So the emotions have purpose. They're there for us, and they're there to help organize behavior, and keep us away from the bad stuff and get us into the good stuff. But if we're camped out against our emotions, they can't work for us. And if we inhibit them, we don't even know what we're feeling. And then it gets very complicated, become very thinky, complicated beings. And I love this quote from Merleau-Ponty about the body. When the body is well and we're engaged in the world, the events of the day are the events of the world. We don't notice the body. When we're sick or we're dying, for us, then the events of the day are the events of the body. I think we could also adapt that into looking at people, perhaps even with depression and anxiety, where the events of the body and the mind, so to speak, become the events of the day rather than the events of the world. What we want is the events of the world, the outside world, to become the events of the day, and then for us to respond to them the way nature intended, which is with much less control and allowing emotions to flow through into what we say and what we do. That might seem like it's going to make a bit of a mess of things to begin with. And sure, there can be a little bit of like trying to work out how to drive that car. Now you're allowing all your emotional energy to flow into outside behavior. But once that happens, it starts to self-correct quite nicely. Has to be introduced in the right place at the right time, but it does start to work. And it's the way the system's designed to work. So imagination of new positive possibilities, presence and disinhibition. I could provide a lot of kind of neuroscience explanations behind both of those, actually. But then the stages of this, I am, is taking people into an experience of stillness. And this means this is body-based, because, body and mind-based. It's one system. So don't think about a body and mind. Think about body-mind system. A restless body is a restless mind. Yeah. Because thinking is something you do with the muscles. So when you relax all the muscles, the thinking stops, because thinking is a body-based thing. It's not overhanging the whole field is this Cartesian myth of a disembodied mind in a body. And that overlays the whole field. That there are some thoughts happening in mind that's somehow different from the body. It's a mind-body system. It's a mind-body system. And the person that discovered hypnosis, James Braid, proposed to rename hypnosis psychophysiology. Psychology and physiology, not different departments, one thing. Yeah. So we are going to quieten, and we know how to do that because a lot of hypnotic inductions use this at the beginning. Stop the mind and still the mind, but that means the body as well. So body-mind system still, and just in a pure experience of being. That means no thoughts. So this isn't mindfulness and observing your thoughts or things like that. There's still quite a lot of activity going on there. No. Ceasing all activity, all effort, and just resting for a moment is in a pleasant feeling of just like being. And then really start trying to have that become the kind of ground and center of our clients, or if we're doing it ourselves, of ourselves. The feeling of who I am when I'm not doing anything, not even thinking. my sense of just I amness. It isn't I think, therefore I am. It's I am, therefore I am. Yeah. Taking clients into that experience of just existing, amness, being, pure being mode. Now, the interesting thing is to tie this into creativity, we talked about thoughts looping. You see, you can't be creative if you're just looping from one thought to another. When you stop and dive into this stillness, it is out of the stillness that some new kind of idea that's a summation of your whole mind body system's organic intelligence, so to speak, can arise. And this is important not just in creative endeavors, but also sports. So the great sports book to read that I haven't read all of, and I was no people have told me about it for 30 years. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And he says great works of athletic performance or sports performance and great works of art arise out of a glass-like state of stillness. So this being relaxed and present, yeah. So we can facilitate this. This is not something that takes 20 years to accomplish. That's a lie. We can actually guide clients into an experience of complete cessation of thought and just peaceful relaxation quite quickly, and then show them how to bring that about for themselves. I can do this within a client within 5 or 10 minutes. And I focus up that as one of the first things I want to do is stop the chatter, have them rest peacefully in themselves, and see that they can do that for themselves. Coming down to their still center again and again. Once we establish I amness, there's no self-judgment, there's no self-mistrust, there's no self-downing, self-hatred. Oh, I'm just a shit, I'm useless. It's just pleasant feeling of I amness. Now we build from here into, I'll come back to this in a minute, I canness. Yeah, the self-efficacy journey, which can begin with the fact that you can relax and quieten your mind now and stop your mind. But this sense of I can happens both at the conscious level, three levels actually, the conscious level, and the sort of self-belief mindset, the actual inner talk that goes with that. I can do this, yeah. And then also this unconscious level in which the brain is predicting action possibilities or affordances, yeah. And obviously that pre-conscious, before we even become conscious of anything, sensing of the brain of action possibilities is what we want to put in. We want to make sure that is in there, and then build the kind of I can mindset that comes from also experiences of being able to do stuff, and then ensure that that is then locked in with the verbal self-talk of I can do it. Yeah, all three. There is some updating we need to do to Albert Bandura's model here, which we're going to aim to publish a paper on. But essentially, it very much leans into Albert Bandura's ideas of self-efficacy and self-belief, and that what determines outcomes to a strong degree in mental health, in education, in general health, in careers, in sports performance, and even in aging, is self-efficacy or self-belief. Yeah, one beliefs in one abilities to be able to handle and cope with challenging situations. So this is where so much of the work is. But I can, and from here then, and you talked about setting goals at this point. And I think this is very interesting, Krissie, because somebody just wrote to me as well, Millie, who's one of our coaches and supervisors, tutors, saying she's using the model, but the client didn't want to do values because she just came in for a simple thing. So it's just swapping it out into doing goals here, which is kind of what you were doing. And one could then might be very helpful for people then to dive into looking at values. But often people come in just because they want to get their driving back, or they want to whatever, stop smoking or something. And well, values work could be good for stopping smoking, couldn't it? So, but an inquiry into values means, what do I really want my life to be about? And your whole life not being about sort of avoiding frightening situations, because that's not really the story you want to have. So, but we want to propose that we only come to this question once that sense of who I am, I amness is built, and the sense of agency, I canness is built. Then what do I want that to be about? And just to come back to that I amness as well, I think it's worth saying, in Greek philosophy, that the great maxim is know thyself. Know thyself. And so this question, who, and then that's the great question in Eastern philosophy, is the self-inquiry of who am I? It's called Atma Vichara. So it's this self-inquiry, who am I? Who am I? And what we want to take people is see, you are this feeling of I amness. That's it. And then you have agency to do stuff in the world. I canness. In a way, we could say we know ourselves through being and doing. Yeah. First through just being, but then through doing, we discover what we want to do and what our values are. But we can't discover what our values are unless we've got some agency. If we feel that even making a cup of tea is challenging, the sense of what we want to do and know ourselves through purpose, what will be a purposeful life makes no sense. And then finally, to make it all happen, I act. So this isn't just all talking therapy. Oh, that was no. Between sessions, clients are putting this into action, and that action is in service of those values. And it is also disinhibited, where we are not holding back. We're making sure we're overcoming any inhibition, shyness, hesitancy, that our attention is focused into the outside world. And we're focused on flourishing both ourselves and our family and our community, that we are not islands, we're interconnected. So this is the model. I am, I can, I value, I act, connect, and flourish, driven underneath by working with imagination, new positive possibilities, and also presence and disinhibition. And there's another aspect to that disinhibition here as well, to make sure that people are experiencing things first person. Yeah. You know, we got thrown out of the Garden of Eden because we acquired self-knowledge and we discovered we were naked. Because I don't know, someone put a mirror there. We became so we could look at ourselves from the outside. But when we just look out through our own eyes, we can't see our faces. You can't see your face, right? Have a look for it. You can't see it. Yeah. So, but a lot of the time we run around and we're aware that we're objects for other people and people can look at us. But then when we buy into that, we suddenly become an object for ourselves. And I think the greatest tragedy of human existence is that we spend our time imagining how we look to others and then trying to adjust our behavior to that, when we don't know how we look to others, and it doesn't matter anyway. What matters much more actually is who's here in front of me and what are they saying and how are they responding. And my own self-image and prediction of how I think I look to them is completely, completely, completely a waste of time. The idea that the evaluation of a species' intelligence is that it can recognize itself in a mirror is, I think, not a measure of intelligence. It's just a side effect of intelligence, and it's not a useful thing. Give me a use case for it. I can't find any use case for it, because as soon as you're caught up with processing yourself as an object, you're not paying attention to the person in front of you. You're actually becoming really self-obsessed. So that is the other thing, is the first person perspective and letting go of ourselves as objects. It's not that we're all, of course, we're objects for other people. It's when we become objects for ourselves and manage ourselves from the outside. No, we own this I amness, looking out into the world, encountering the world. So this is the model. And it's just I'm filling in more words as I explain it each time, Krissie.
I thought it was interesting to look at I values, not to be to recognize that that can have different levels. So for some people, they value the ability to drive to Oxford. That's a
Right.
value. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so a
Yeah.
goal,
Yes.
this is meaningful to me. What do I want to be able to do? So it
Yes.
doesn't have to be a philosophical inquiry into my deepest
My values.
values. But I could see why that. So I mean, it could be, and within the model it can be. But actually, I think it also is valid just to use it as what would you like to be able to do? If you could do anything, what would you do tomorrow? Like, and that says something about values. Well, I value freedom. I value confidence. I value being able to jump in my car and go wherever I want to go and not be limited to the five minutes nearest to my house. I mean, seems to me a perfectly legitimate
Yeah.
value
Yeah.
for me.
But it is
So I
quite a
think
different
people
model,
might
isn't
get
it?
caught up with the word values meaning
Yeah,
some
yeah,
sort of
yeah, yeah.
philosophical exploration as opposed to just what do I want to be able to do if I had the freedom and believed it possible. But yeah.
So this is a model that's based on um, the fact that you're not broken. You are full, whole, and complete. That you have a lot more agency than you think, and that it's using the fundamental way the brain works by which we experience the world around us as the main mechanism of change in therapy. And I will propose bit radically that all therapy, that's how all therapy works. People begin to glimpse new affordances, new possibilities. Oh, I could be like that. I could be like that. I mean, they can think about with their parents, well, I could have been like that. I could have been like that. I'm not sure. But that really leads forward into something future focused. I could be like that. They glimpse it. They might not be aware they're glimpsing it. I call that liminal imagining. And then the therapist might direct them into a little bit more. Well, yes, well, how would it be if you were a bit more assertive and could take them into some assertiveness training? So we have more sort of directed use of the imagination in therapy, but then hypnosis is imagination on steroids, you see. And so but that imagination, there is an argument for saying that imagination is the basis of intelligence in terms of any creature that is not just bumping into things, that is has some element of non-random planned behavior, does have a generative model of the world and is in some way, not consciously, but running a simulation of possibilities. Go here or here, go here or here, go here or here. And that sort of maps to the whole concept of imagination, therefore. So think about imagination differently. And it's not visualization, by the way. I just want to get that word out of the way. It could have visual elements in it, but the fundamental of imagination is first person experiencing as if they're doing something. And primarily it is behavior based. So as if they're driving. So that lady that was taken through a hypnotic journey of giant motorway, she's not looking at a picture of herself in the car driving up the motorway. That wouldn't do anything. But if you asked her to visualize it, that's what she might do if you use the word visualize. So we steer away from that as if you're there right now, the hands on the wheel, looking out through, feeling the air conditioning, etc. So we place them in a very sensory and behavioral way into that situation. And visual elements could be part of that, but they're mapped in a three-dimensional space that they're imagining they're moving through. And it's the movement, the behavior through it that is the key element of imagination. So because that I think it needs to be the word visualize has got very messed up. And this notion of imagination that we're presenting here as also first person experiencing, as sort of as if you're there, um, is it's unusually hidden in the field. There's a big book, I've got it on my shelf here, the Cambridge Book of the Imagination. Oh my God, I thought I'll order that. Huge, all these essays by all these academics about imagination. To me, there's virtually no mention of this model of the imagination that we're talking about. But this model maps to the neuroscience and to very various aspects of child development in a really powerful way. So yeah, it's I think it's a coherent model. And yeah, it is. Well, Don, sorry, it is a bit revolutionary in terms of the mechanism of change, but also the ordering of the change. Does that make, yeah, that we're
Well, to go back to Don saying if it's revolutionary, don't go near it. There's also, was it Paul Sarkovsky who said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So it's
yeah,
fine to move the field forward. You just have to evidence it. It's not an article of faith. So we are, as I actually wrote in the comments as you were saying that, sorry, Don, it's like we are going to test it. We're not just saying this is
yeah.
this is revolutionary, everyone use it. It's going to be empirically tested, not just in terms of does it work, but why does it work? The different, dismantling studies and assessing, evaluating different aspects of the model. So,
So to that extent, yeah, Chris is heading up our Hypno-CBT research unit, and we've got a whole series of research studies planned, and one of the first ones will be also simply writing up some case studies using the new model. That'll be one of the first ones. So yeah, and we'll be looking to our trainers and tutors and some of the people who've already been using it a long time in the field who want to come and form kind of a sort of a case study peer supervision group around that, and then be discussing it because I'm putting this out there for people to try. But I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me, but it seems to make sense and it seems to communicate to clients quite well. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, why I'm aiming to change the field. We're aiming to change the field, and make therapy just much more, not make, I don't know, this is therapy, change and possibility, human potential,
Yeah, I think
just
one of the things I like
more
about it
available.
is that it's a very optimistic model.
Mm,
Um, because, yeah, I mean, I can't remember whose framework it was. It's not Maslow, it's somebody else similar. But I remember when we did when I was still training on the doctorate, there was someone presented, and it was like the highest tier was profound and enduring joy or something. Um, and we all kind of groaned and laughed as if like, yeah, I'll have some of that, please. The idea that our goal for therapists, for clients was profound and enduring joy seemed a little ambitious. Um, but actually, um, why go for symptom reduction as opposed to um, flourishing and expanded possibilities? I know that one of the things I've done because I'm a practicing consultant clinical psychologist is I haven't just used hypnosis for subclinical presentations the way you might do if you were newly qualified and you didn't have a background in therapy. I've started using it for, fairly in significant mental health problems like OCD, long-standing significant OCD presentations. And it also works there too. So, I was completely wedded to the exposure and response prevention protocol, still am. You have to change the behavior to discover that nothing terrible happens when you don't neutralize your obsession with your compulsion. But did it all in imagination first, you know? And then did a script that was like I'm now in my say the child who was doing this was just in imagination, not respond having the obsession, allowing it to be there. I was saying to her in the script, I know this is meaningless nonsense. I know this is just a story I'm telling myself. I don't need to do anything about it. I don't need nothing bad's going to happen. I feel relaxed. I feel happy. And it just kind of went away. So the model, I didn't change the model of OCD, how it works, what's happening, how it presents, but the treatment was just so much simpler. Um, so yeah, and so I think it's a really optimistic model because it's not just, if you work really hard for 12 sessions, we can reduce your symptoms a bit. It's actually, we can change how you see the world and yourself within the world and the possibilities available to you from the world. And it's a very, very optimistic model about the potential for humans to grow and flourish. So I really like that. And I'm kind of it's slightly embarrassed by my cynical student self, laughing at the idea that enduring joy might be a goal. But it wasn't just it was the lecturer and everyone in the room was like, yeah. Um, so yeah,
That's interesting. I came across
cynicism in
Maslow when I
therapy.
was 16, and the idea of having peak experiences, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. I want just lots and lots of peak experiences, and
Yeah,
that, and
well,
so
run
I
down
I
to me
just
by my training. So
I decided to become a professional happiness seeker. I wanted to work out how one could be happy independent of the external situation.
yeah, well, that's
So
where Eastern philosophy will take you.
that's where Eastern philosophy took me, you see, into that. And how does one? Um,
Should we open up
yeah,
some questions now, do you think?
yeah. Does anybody have any questions? What do you make of this? Do you
That's
like it?
where I'm hoping that this is landing reasonably. We haven't
We
lost
just we're
everyone.
just having a nice chat. These
We're just
guys are
having
all.
a conversation amongst ourselves.
What do you make of this?
Oh dear, I hope that doesn't mean everyone's just left. Well, I've
No, I
enjoyed the
think that
conversation anyway, Mark.
I enjoyed it. We moved it forward. Um, that's why we want to run it as a meeting. Sometimes meetings people speak up a little bit more than when we run it, just as a webinar. Um, does anyone you
Oh,
like that,
okay.
Labour? Yeah. Labour's, I
Yeah,
think,
it is powerful. Um,
Labour's just finished, I think she said. I'm just going back here, which she told us, waiting for her exam results. So she's waited to get her qualification. And can you recognize it that, I will do a little bit more on this. I'm going to record some lectures that'll go along with the course that'll show you where the I amness exercises are, I canness, how we're building that, etc. So fabulous, Claire. Thank you. Good. Yeah, I mean, who for whom is this prediction engine a kind of new idea, and does it kind of make sense? Very interested to listen to how and why it works. Liz, thank you, Liz. I love the focus of the therapy is on getting results and not on understanding where and how problems developed. Yeah, and then Sarah, not just on where and how problems develop, but it's also not quite so. I mean, I could say, is this a solution focused? Is this solution focused therapy? In a way, yes, it's solution focused, yeah, rather than problem focused. Um,
and
love
it's
the
absolutely
simplicity.
about getting results. We want people to feel better and achieve what they
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to achieve. It's not a sort of intellectual exercise to be in
yeah, yeah.
therapy.
Jude says, I love the simplicity of the way you explain it about their imagination. It's like rehearsing it first positively. Yeah, that's what it is. Just say hypnosis is just imagining rehearsing positive possibilities and just playing with them. And I say, don't, if you want to take it seriously, don't take it seriously. Play in your imagination. We're just going to have the client, let's just take a session break and just play with some positive ideas. Um, Patrick, you say it validates everything I know. Research discovered through some experience and experience with clients are clear. But thank you. And I know you've been around for a while here, Patrick. Do you like that? That's great. I love that. Thank you so much, Leva. It makes total sense and it explains that change is possible. Stephanie, tonight's session reminded me why I enjoyed the training so much. If anyone's on the fence about this course, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to take the leap.
So I'd like to ask Claire, who has asked, could you strengthen this with art in sessions? I'd love to know more about what she's envisaging because I think you can be as creative as you like, and if you can find a way to bring in something to make it real and vivid and engaging for people, then go for it. But I'm
Yeah.
I'm imagining the question is because you have some ideas about that already. So um, I'd like to know more about that, if that sounds interesting.
If you want to, I'm going to work with these guys who put this film together on art here, which is called Know Your Muse. And they're actually, I have got the direct link for the video they made on Vimeo. Let me get Know Your Muse. So is a colleague from my spiritual path who's a Russian artist and also runs an art college in upstate New York. And him and my other friend there, Ron Brent, put this wonderful video together, documentary Know Your Muse, where he gets people, he shows people they're creative. This is in painting, and there's all these different people going, oh, and just gets them a lot of disinhibition, a lot of trusting your feelings, throwing all the paint up just while some music's playing, and then watching it then form into something creative. But this idea um, that we are creative at root, in my philosophical system, that our essence of I amness is essentially creative, and creativity comes out of that silence. So I think that's where it becomes the interesting space is not so much using art as a way to express what's going inside, but using art to reinforce the central idea that I am a creative being. And I think that's, and then what are the implications of that? So Mapia says, to my understanding, you use the CBT protocols to identify problems, beliefs, schemas, and then somehow add a hypnotherapy plan to help the client feel better. Is that right, Krissie? So,
Yeah, I saw that and then it kind of disappeared. So I'm trying to find the question and read it out again because I can't see it on my screen anymore. I wanted to answer that and then I've lost it.
says, so to my understanding, you use the CBT protocols to identify problems, beliefs, schemas, etc., and then somehow add a hypnotherapy plan to help the client feel better. Is that right?
Not quite. Um, so I mean, it depends what we're talking about. So, in terms of ignore the model for now, this new I can model, but just CBT, Hypno CBT, the CBT protocols with hypnosis. So yes, you do use the CBT protocols to case conceptualization using the hot cross bun, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, identify the ways in which they're getting in the way, um, and then identify what changes would be useful for the person to make. Um, so the somehow add a hypnotherapy plan to help the client feel better. What that bit, I think you're not quite capturing what the hypnotherapy bit does, which is that you take all of those changes and you take a real life scenario that's going to come up soon, tomorrow, next week, that a person's struggling with that's linked to their specific goals that they're setting. So driving or riding or public speaking or an exam or whatever. And then you take all of those changes into the situation and you experience it. So in standard CBT, you would get people to test out beliefs in behavioral experiments. You would do maybe a bit of imaginal exposure. You might get them to play around with making these changes in the real world. So you'd say, okay, so next time you blah, blah, blah. In hypnosis, you run a simulation of the situation in imagination, which is experienced directly, vividly. So it's like you are running a new simulation of how you would go about doing this in the future, which is not just feeling better. It's experiencing life without the problems, experiencing life as if you've already made all the changes. So yes, they feel better, but that's the byproduct, not the intention. You're helping them run a simulation for how they can function in the world in a much more skillful, effective, calm, relaxed, disinhibited, engaged way, however they want to experience the world. So then at the end of that, they have had a direct experience of life without the issues and with the changes having already been made, and then they go out into the world and practice what they've already done. So it primes the brain for these changes, because you have now run new simulations of you behaving differently in these situations that in the past you've, so it's definitely not just about helping the client feel better. It's about help building the client's efficacy, sense of possibilities, confidence, and then giving them a direct experience of all of that so they can go out in the world and do it for real. And
And
then it becomes a kind of virtuous cycle because they come back and go, wow, I went, I felt so much better. It was so much. And then they set new goals and more ambitious goals, and the world of possibilities opens up for them. So
but we're also
hopefully
going
that answers
straight
your
for
question.
working on the brain as a prediction engine.
Yeah, we're changing things at a brain level. They're not
We're
feeling better,
changing
they're
things, and
changing
CBT is
things.
doing that, but it's sometimes a bit more roundabout than going, well, let's just imagine have experiences being free of problems, allow that to create new priors, new models of you in the world that your brain then predicts from. Does that make sense? So it's directly working in the most we're updating the brain's predictive circuits in the most direct way possible.
Yeah.
Um, and being able to do that very quickly in the therapy room, not having to go on a drive with them all the way down to London to update the brain predictive brain. We can take them through those journeys very quickly and different types of journeys. And then that's laying down what are called new priors and new prior experiences by which then the brain makes sense of the whatever's happening in the present moment. Does that make sense? So get understanding and kind of getting into that brain as a prediction engine theory will change the way you're looking at that, and then go, okay, how do we my job as a therapist is to update the predictive brain. It's not to change their beliefs, it's to update how the brain is predicting, making sense of the world at an unconscious level. How can I do that? I'm going to give them some different experiences, essentially, and those new experiences will now become the new past that controls the future. Does that make sense? So we're updating their model of the world and themselves in the world. Um,
Yeah.
okay. I love it. Making me smile, says Georgie. I'm training very slowly with you. Do love it. I really active question. Oh, nice. Then bedridden with a long COVID, for 2 years. Now having self-hypnotized myself, practice my hideous nerve pain and mostly under control. But that's fabulous. And you should do share more about that. And also be good to get in touch with Anne Glennie. You can write in and but you can find her on the website as well, because she's very much working. And that book She recommended unlearn your pain. To what extent some things like long code have predictive aspects as opposed to actual impact on the, but even the impact on the biology, I mean, prediction, it affects everything inside and outside. Um, yeah, cool, good. Jane asked a question here. My experience so far is clients love it and get fast results, or they disappear after session 4. Unsure if they like this modality or that it's working. Can it create change if they still blame others? Um, I'll let you answer that one, Krissie, there.
Okay, I can't see that one either. So read that one out
It's
again.
in the Q&A panel. It's in the Q&A
Oh,
panel.
Q&A panel. I'm looking on the chat still. I don't have the Q&A panel. Oh, is it on under more?
Under more, it'll
Ah,
pop
there
out.
we
There you
are.
go.
Q&A panel. Clients love it if I was sure they like the modality or that it's working. They stop blame others. Um, well, I mean that's a big question. Um, so yeah, I mean you can't control others. Blaming others would be you'd have to kind of unpick a little bit about. If I was in supervision with you, I would want to know what you mean by blaming others. I would say that it is very helpful to track how a person's feeling about therapy routinely as you go along. Session rating scales, kind of therapeutic alliance kind of stuff. You can do it with a form or you can just ask questions. But because I mean, some people tell you that it's fantastic and then you never see them again and they clearly were lying because they didn't like it. But I would want to know why I kind of there's Don Meichenbaum, who's Mark's referenced a few times, has a kind of sobering statistic that 75% of therapists never get better after they qualify. They stay the same all the way through. So their outcomes don't improve throughout their careers, and then 25% of people continue to improve as they gain expertise and experience throughout their careers and get better and better and better, and their outcomes get better and better and better. And the question is, how do you make sure you're in that 25%? And a big part of that is understanding what's going on for your clients as it's happening in real time. So that is interrogating, reflecting, asking them, being really clear that you can't always tell how people are feeling unless you actually ask them, and being really, really focused on understanding how they are experiencing therapy. And the simplest way of doing that is actually just build it into your routine outcome monitoring that at the end of every session, those 4 straight questions on the session rating scale. Did we talk about what you wanted to talk about? Did you find it helpful? Did you feel listened to? Do you think this is going to be useful for you in your life? I can't remember exactly how they're worded, but those are the kind of 4 questions. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, if somebody is blaming others, other blame, I mean, is normally a kind of projection because self-blame is hard. So I am as I can as normally if you can't cope with it can't be my fault, it therefore has to be somebody else's fault. Like most blame outwards is just self-hate projected. I would say, I don't know if Mark would agree, but that's kind of um it's threatening to take responsibility for problems if you don't feel as though you can cope. So I think I amness and I canness might could certainly help people drop blame to be it's fine to make mistakes, it's fine to, but you have to have got that framework understood. Like if someone's still just in a fix me state of mind and they're passive and they're looking to answers outside of themselves and they're not owning the process, it's not collaborative, it's not a journey you're going on together, it's not. So I think that would be a conversation for supervision to have a much more detailed conversation about it. But yes, definitely this whole model can help with accountability and self because it's completely self-referential. It's I am without judgments, blame, self or other. I can fix my own problems. I value being, having agency in the world and taking responsibility for myself and
It,
my life, and then I connect with others in more positive ways other than blaming.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, so when you think of somebody with high self-efficacy, they set themselves challenging goals because they believe they can sustain efforts and achieve them. When they meet with failure, they don't put it down to external factors. They tend to put it down to internal effort, knowledge, practice, which they can change. So they have an internal locus of control, so rather than external. So the locus of control question is a nice one to look at it through. External
Yeah.
locus of control is like it's all due to factors on the outside. I've got no influence over it. Internal locus of control, I've got a lot more agency about this, a lot more I can do. And and so when people come to take the course and they go, well, what percentage of your students qualify? I'm like going, that's an external locus of control question. You're making it sound like, how many people, have, are your piano lessons successful? Well, it depends if you practice, you've got some agency in this, and the outcomes. Don't look at the averages. Determine your potential path through that, but your sense of agency, what you can do will increase. It's the most important thing you can invest in your life is apart from stopping all the painful self-narrative, I amness, is your sense of self-efficacy and agency and being able to tackle situations and then have that I can solve this. And so you don't go around blaming others, you look for good problems to solve that are within the range of your possibility of influence and getting stressed about things that you can't influence, blaming, Donald Trump for the experience you're having is like it's not within your somebody with high self-efficacy would not do that because it's not within the range of things they can influence. They might form a political party and get things going from there, but they're not going to, yeah. So they don't focus on blame, they focus on action. Um, and I think this other, I'd be interesting, Chrissy, if you, there was a guy, unfortunately, was going to be he was president of the BPS and then got thrown out for bullying, which is a bit of a pity because I liked his theory, but he had a theory of self-responsibility, that self-responsibility is the critical moment in therapy. It is the pivotal moment when the client takes self-responsibility and stops blaming, and that the whole getting clients to that point, everything is downhill from once we establish that. And I
Mm.
think that's a really interesting way to look at it. How do we get clients to take responsibility? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that the philosophy that this whole process, this whole approach is rests on isn't necessarily made explicit to clients, but it's very useful to folk to reflect on it as a therapist. I think that this is about happiness comes from within. This is not about, Epictetus like Greek Stoicism that we are. It's not the events in the world that make us happy or unhappy. It's our own responses to those events.
Mm.
And that's such a taking internal responsibility position, but not losing compassion because sometimes people are having a really, really, really hard time. So, can you stay with compassion without going into blame? And again, that might be again where supervision would untease it because if someone's blaming others because they're really, really miserable, they might just need to actually have some of their distress held and heard and validated before they're ready to kind of let go and move on because their distress is
Yeah.
their communication to the world that they're not okay. And they might need someone to hear that. So it's a big question for a webinar without a Q&A. But yeah, we should do this again as a meeting when people can actually interact with us.
Yeah. And this idea also of making sure we create an atmosphere where clients can give feedback and tell us honestly what's going on. And how do we do that? Um,
Yeah.
that's important to contemplate that and it requires a kind of slightly sort of fearless, hold on, my wife's trying to call me, a fearlessness about feedback, not being scared to get the feedback that this isn't working, or you said something in the session before that I didn't like and it upset me. We've got to get out of our own way there so that we can really be open to the feedback the client needs to give us to help them get involved in directing the therapy. They need to get involved in the process of directing therapy in a way so that it's not just being led by us and we're asking, well, what, but asking them as well questions. Um, so what do you think we should do next in therapy? Oh, I don't know. I'm paying you the money. Well, okay. And this is interesting. Here's the clients really leaning on us, and we want to get in the space where they're beginning to think about, come up. Well, I think maybe we should do this first in therapy. You can have a discussion about that if you think that is, but getting them involved in the process of designing the therapy.
And
Um,
actually, that's where motivational interviewing gets really useful as well. Where
hmm,
the harder you feel you're working as a therapist, because the client's very much kind of fix it, fix it, fix it, and outward looking, the more you should sort of drop it and say something really controversial, like, yeah, you're right, you probably lost, probably can't do anything for you, probably can't. It's something sort of paradoxical reflection, like, yeah, well, not sure I can help you really. And then they're like, what do you mean you can't help me? And it's like, well, it doesn't seem like anything's really working. I'm probably doing motivational interviewing a disservice here, but there is something about there's a phrase in DBT when someone's really pulling on the rope because they're like, you just let go of your end, and they either then find a way to stand up on their own or they kind of fall over. So we might, maybe we should do a webinar on motivational interviewing and how to thread that in, because I think sometimes therapists take on too much of the responsibility for,
Definitely.
and
I
it's
did. I
not
did
that
for a long time. Yeah.
clients, it's not for long-term good outcomes. Clients need to be collaborative and working with you, which means they need to take responsibility for their own treatment.
I mean, I look at my own history with that, and I think that there is this aspect in private therapy where people aren't contracted in to do 8, 10 sessions of like making sure you give enough they come back to the, so and that's a bit of a problem, because then you're just trying to give all this stuff so they feel better, so they'll come back for the next session. And that I think in private therapy can be an issue. Certainly, I noticed that for myself. That'd be certainly be worth, I think, looking at that to what extent we might get caught in that. But
Mm.
great questions. Um, I'm glad that made some more sense for you there, Mapia, and the combination. Very good. It's 9 o'clock. It's time. I think whether we're going to do it for an hour and a half or 2 hours, but anyway, that was good. Thank you for your questions. That was great. Krissie, thank you for sharing so much about that. And yeah,
Yeah, thank you,
do get,
everybody. Nice
yeah,
to hear so many good questions. Made me think, so that was always good. I like being challenged. I like being um, it's really useful. I think Richard Feynman said if you can't explain something, you don't understand it. So it's always useful to be
yes,
put on the spot and asked questions, because if you can't explain it, then I don't understand it well enough, and I need to go back and look it up, remind myself.
yes,
But yeah, thank you.
yes. Very good. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Krissie. Have a great evening and do send your questions in. And we'll run more of these. Thank you. Oh, tomorrow evening, I'm doing the whole evening just on the model, by the way, myself. So if you want to come back and watch me do it again, but I'll do it differently each time and bring your questions.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone. Good
Thank you.
night.
Bye bye.